I.TARU is a Japanese brand newly founded by a Tokyo-based commercial shipping executive, and the name I.TARU is an abbreviation of his name. Now, I.TARU's vision is to provide a watch brand that gives customers an inspiration and feeling of trust, and also to create the best form of affordable mechanical watches. They have two watches in their range, the Classic and the Classic Gauge, which is a unisex dress watch with an open heart design. And this is actually the first Japanese microbrand that I've had in my hand, so I'm uber excited to have created this video. And just to reiterate what was said in a menacing and eerie 90-second spec, the I.TARU Classic comes in at 13.6mm thick, including the domed crystal, 38mm in diameter. I measured 43mm lug to lug, 20mm at the lug, with this 316L stainless steel bracelet tapering down to 18mm at the signatured clasp. Now, the case is a 316L stainless steel case and very highly polished. From the side view, the end of those lugs dip down to the same level of the caseback and stretches out to 43mm lug to lug. It's fairly straightforward in shape, as you'd expect in a dress watch, and as I've mentioned, measures in at 38mm in diameter. The bezel here is also very highly polished to add to that very dressy feel of the case, and note that you do have a push-pull crown here at 3 o'clock, not signatured, and again very highly polished. Now, I measured the crown in at 5.4mm, and well balanced sized crown I must say in comparison to that case. And just to note that the water resistance is 5 bar or 50 meters, so perfectly fine for everyday wear and getting the watch wet, but not great if you want to set a world record for the deepest ever scuba dive on compressed air. So yeah, overall a pretty straightforward, highly polished case really. Now onto that dial, and starting on that sunray blue. Now this is the only colourway available for the I.TARU Classic, so one could say that this is their signature colourway. Now, a lot of watch enthusiasts may have several, let's say, very dressy watches that don't fall outside the realms of white, silver or even black, and tend to perhaps have blue colourway dials, mainly in their divers or sport watch collections. But actually I think this really works because, in my personal view, the sunray blue pairs very nicely indeed with the high polish of the case and of those indices. Now, I say that in certain angles of light. Okay, so you're probably looking at this video and seeing that there's a clear legibility issue, but trust me, that appears so much worse on camera than in real life, and in particular in natural sunlight. Now, I won't lie, legibility is probably this watch's only letdown, but trust me, it's not as bad as it appears on screen, and when I was out and about, legibility at times wasn't really a big issue. So just focusing on that blue for a little while longer. In truth, I actually found it quite hard to film perfectly just how nice, in my opinion, this blue actually is, and also how high shine the overall face of this watch is too. When I took it out of the box, it certainly surprised me in comparison to what I've seen online to what I have in my hands. It really is a very royal and deep blue, and the one word that sprung to mind when I saw that sunray blue for the first time is that it felt very imperial. It certainly passes off very nicely as an alternative colour to the standard white, black or silver to my dress watch collection. And just to note that that dial is crafted by the very reputable and highly rated Japanese-based Kyowa Co. Limited. In certain angles of light, that sunray blue pairs very nicely indeed with the high polish of the case and those hour and minute markers. Those hour markers are baton markers applied and faceted to give this watch a glistening element to it when it catches the light. You have minute markers printed in white, and actually as you look closely you'll see the end of that dial and the outskirts of that dial going into a black chapter ring, and that chapter ring has printed numerals to indicate minutes every 5 minutes, with singular minute or seconds markers and quarter minute or second markers in between. Now, I get the feeling that most dress watch designers would have gone for a slightly more simplistic chapter ring, a train track for example, or singular minute markers with no numerals, perhaps even a slightly sloped riort with a simplistic design, but I'm glad that I.TARU decided to make this slightly more complex with a bit more detail added, and I actually think that that black colourway on the chapter ring doesn't at all stand out as you'd probably imagine. The hour and minute hands are fairly standard baton hands, both with a very faint tip, highly polished and faceted to complement the rest of the watch. The end of the hour hand falling short about 1mm from the hour markers, and the minute hand stretching out fairly deep, I must say, into that chapter ring at the same length as the seconds hand. And that entire dial set falls deep under that highly polished bezel and domed sapphire crystal, which, by the way, has inner reflective coating. I must say that the feel of that dial, the crystal, the case combo is very dressy, very highly polished with this wonderful blue sunray dial. I must reiterate just how nice that blue is. But if I had to give some advice, I'd most certainly suggest a bit more AR coating too. I won't lie and say the biggest negativity of this watch is the readability of the dial. Yes, it looks far worse on camera than it does in natural light, and it doesn't help matters that the crystal feels very highly reflective at times, which adds to that legibility issue. The faceted high shine, indices and hands against such a deep blue sunray dial, coupled with the need for a bit more AR coating, will naturally cause legibility issues. But like I say, it's a lot worse on camera than in real life, which is kind of what I mean when I say that this was difficult to film. I feel like I'm focusing on that rather unfairly because it probably isn't as bad as you think. And that aside, the dial is just simply stunning. The bracelet is a stainless steel 316L bracelet. It's an oyster style bracelet with flat 3-piece links, the middle of which is brushed. You have male end links, and I'm personally glad they chose male end links because it just adds length. Perhaps about 3.5mm per end link or 7mm in total to that 43mm lug to lug. It has a signatured folding clasp with one adjustment hole, and I actually think it looks fairly sporty too. Now I.TARU did send me over 2 additional straps, one in blue and one in black, and I.TARU hope to release additional straps in August 2023. Now both of these additional straps are made from ocean recycled materials from the Mediterranean Sea and lined with microfiber. Personally, I think the canvas blue somewhat takes away from the royal and imperial blue on that dial, but the black is a decent option. Now personally, I'd stick with the SS316L as a personal preference, but it's nice to have some variation when you do make this purchase, and I do hope that I.TARU expand their range of bracelets and straps. The movement is a Miyota caliber 8215 movement, Miyota's signature standard mechanical movement, 21 joules, 21,600 beats per hour, 42 hours of power reserve, hand windable, this version having hacking seconds. Now when I read the spec and learnt that of the caliber used, I again questioned the temptation to design such a great looking watch and not insert one of Miyota's 9000 series calibers in there. But I do think that you'll see from the price point in a moment that this is entirely justifiable. Personally, and I may be in the minority here, I'm not particularly bothered about what automatic caliber is used in a sub $500 watch, which is what this is. 21,600 BPH is all she's got, but actually that drunken stagger around the dial somewhat looks a bit smoother when there is a chapter ring or riot in place that has microsecond markers. That movement is all showcased behind this screw down caseback. It has specs straight through the middle indicating water resistance, and I don't know, I perhaps would have liked to have seen a logo etching there or some sort of branding. The face of this watch looks super classy, super dressy, and like I've said a few times, that blue feels elegant, royal and imperial, so perhaps a branded caseback would have complemented that experience on the wrist. I don't know. On my 7.5-inch wrist it wears, well what can I say, it actually wears really nicely, and I personally think it looks fantastic. I've said before in previous videos that when I started my watch journey years ago, really I was only looking at 42mm plus size dials, but as I've gotten older I've taken to 40mm and sub 40mm dials. Now 5 years ago I never would have touched a 38mm dial, but times have changed and I actually feel that this wears a bit bigger. Yes, the lug-to-lug length of 43mm is on the small size, but the protruding male end links adds a bit more to this, and actually the 13.6mm thickness is more akin to a 40 or 42mm case-size watch. It's also 162 grams, which is pretty weighty I must say, and it feels nice and weighty too. And I'm one of those that likes weighty watches. I also think that the dominance of that bezel, the big blue dial and the dome crystal that sits above it all make this watch feel bigger than what you'd expect from a specification perspective. Now I wore this around the cobbled streets of Knaresborough here in beautiful North Yorkshire, which you'll see in a sec on my walk around at the end of my vid, wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and it felt like it wore perfectly fine for my attire. Now in terms of cost, the I.TARU Classic would set you back a cool 50,000 yen, which equates to around 290 UK pounds sterling or 380 USD. Now I've seen other really nice Microbrand dress watches at the 300 USD price point with Ronda quartz movements, so in pale comparison to that, this seems like a fairly well priced watch. It sports a Miyota movement, okay, it's a 8215, but it's still an auto. Great dial, fantastic even, and a really smart set of hands and indices to complement that imperialness of the blue and the high polish of the case. It feels like a premium dress watch too, and of course it has that Microbrand feel to it, and to have a Japanese designed watch in my Microbrand collection personally is something that I've longed for a long time. Now I'll let you decide whether or not you think that price point is of good value, or is it what you'd expect, or even is it overpriced. And my personal opinion is that it's pretty much on the money of what I expect to pay for what feels like, movement aside, a premium dress watch. Overall, I feel that the I.TARU Classic has so much going for it. This signature blue is the perfect colourway for that dial set and case design, in my opinion. I just wish it didn't have such a highly reflective crystal that compounds a dial that suffers from some legibility issues in certain angles of light. But that aside, and focusing on, I guess, how it looks, I really like it as a dress watch. I think that an executive with a blue pinstripe suit, highly polished cufflinks, sat with a cocktail at a networking event is a perfect scenario to wear such a watch. That said, it's nice that I.TARU didn't go down the conventional route of white or silver faced dress watch dials, but I was really surprised when I pulled it out of the box. Firstly, I wasn't expecting it to feel so weighty, and with respect to the way it's been marketed, feel so premium either. Secondly, that dial really caught my eye instantly. It's such a nice tone of blue, much nicer than what the pictures suggest on their website, and probably what I've captured on camera here today. Again, legibility aside, the faceted and high polished hour markers was a brilliant choice, and dare I say, the busyness of that chapter ring, coupled with the oyster style bracelet, gives this dress watch a bit of a sporty edge too. Overall, it's cool. When I stick it on my wrist, I get that feeling that I'm wearing something pretty cool, which is exactly what I want from a watch. It's dressy enough to wear with formal attire, but sporty enough to rock with shorts, a pair of Jordans and a tee. Don't you just love watches like that?
Then you probably won't be able to go in. Oh look, there's water dropping from up there. Unreal to us in there. It looks real. Tomato mess. Found the beetle. I believe we've got bears, ducks, swans, cats, rabbits, Millie, look at that. You used to have that one. Thanks, I'm just scared of weightless. Never knew. paddling, Leah.
Are you going to help paddle, Leah, with your hand?
Yep. See? Oh dear.
I'm trying to leave it for a sec.
No, this way.
I thought I sounded like a pirate. We went from all the way on edge.
Thank you to everybody who's watching. Look after yourselves and each other.